these are my top 50 pound for pound UFC fighters right now, both men and women. Coming in at number 50, we have Jamahal Hill. I know he is a bit of a meme because of how bad he's taking that Poatan loss, but let's not forget he was knocking everyone out beforehand, and 50-45 Glover, and is likely going to make a comeback at some point. Coming in at number 49, we have Dustin, and man, a couple years ago he would have been way higher on this list. He did a good job against Islam, but at the end of the day he did lose most of the rounds, but his knockout over BSC is what got him on this list in the first place, and everything he's done in the past. Coming in at number 48, we have one of the hottest prospects at flyweight in Manuel Kape. Now, Kape versus Makhachev was kinda, weird. Obviously, Makhachev got dropped, but at the end of the day, Kape did win a round and is likely going to be a contender at flyweight for years to come. Coming in at number 47, we have Periera. Look, she might not have the craziest fighting style of all time, but she is definitely one of the most hyped women's fighters to come out in a while. When you actually look at her record, she has been on a winning streak, and she's likely going to get a number 1 contenders fight soon. Now, just to note, there is some inactive fighters like Hamzat who are not on the list, as well as Conor, and also, you might be thinking, how is this different from the UFC's pound for pound list? Just know, I'm using common sense and logic. For example, Bo Nickel is going to be pretty high on this list. Izzy is going to be above Dricus. There's going to be some changes here that don't fully bend to just who has won recently. So with that being said, at number 46, we have Carlos Ulberg. I think it's safe to say that he's going to be a contender at light heavyweight for a really long time. And he has had some big wins already, but he doesn't have that crazy name like we thought he was going to get. I think it's coming sooner rather than later. I think we can all see Carlos and know he is very different from all the other light heavyweights. At number 45, we have Jared Cannonier, and this feels so wrong putting him this low because of that crazy bad stoppage. But Cannonier has been on a tear as of late and has had a complete resurgence in his career. I think we know eventually Cannonier is going to go on a skid, but because of what he's done and how he did get that 1L, I think we can safely say that Cannonier is in the top 50 UFC fighters right now. And unfortunately, at number 44, we have the man that beat him, Imavov. And honestly, I want to put Cannonier above him. And if Imavov didn't get that stoppage, he probably wouldn't even have been on this list. But I can't put Imavov under Cannonier. But man, that was a terrible stoppage. At number 43, we have the most hyped prospect in featherweight that there's been in a really long time. Well, I guess there was Ilya, but Diego Lopez. And Diego Lopez basically stole the show at 303 because of Dan Ige, and he had a pretty good performance there. I think with how he sparked out Sodic, we know that Diego is the real deal, and even beating Dan Ige on short notice is an accomplishment nonetheless, even if he did gas out in the third. And his debut performance against Ivalov also showed us that his jiu-jitsu is legit, his grappling is legit. And I think Diego, Ilya, Ivalov, Max, Volk, Ortega, there is so many fun names at 145, and I think Diego is going to be the new Charles Oliveira of the UFC. And now, if you don't want Belal Muhammad to ever get a successful title defense, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and let's get back to the video. This is a sad one, man. Coming in at number 42 is Corey Sandhagen. Jesus Christ, his fight against Umar happened recently at the time of recording. He was doing so well until he forgot he had to hit him back. He was on the defense the entire time, but Corey is still really good, and I don't know why he's starting to fight like Belal and all these wrestlers, and he's just trying to grapple and defensively grapple like he did against Fawn and Cheeto. What happened to the Corey who fought Piotr even though he lost? I know he's still very good, and that's why he's on this list, and I think even just using common sense, Corey's probably beating everyone else at bantamweight. That being said, at number 41, we have Brandon Moreno, and Moreno is taking some time off, but I believe he's going to be booked to come back very soon. And his performance against Royval was really bad. Like, it was terrible. I cannot believe he lost in Mexico to Royval on short notice. And honestly, the only reason he made it on this list is because of how good he actually was in the past. Like, before, he probably would have been in the top 10 pound for pound, but now because of that 1L, that was really just how are you going to lose in Mexico, man? He's all the way down there. Coming in at number 40, we have Arnold Allen, and Arnold Allen feels like one of those guys at 145 that doesn't get the hype he deserves, but his loss against Ivalov really sucked. I feel like if that was a 5-round fight, we all know Arnold would have won, and I wish Arnold just talked a bit, let his personality loose, let everyone know who he was, because his fights are super exciting, and he's from the UK, so he would have a massive fan base if he did just speak up more. Coming in at 39 is someone who does not have the mouth to back it up, who is only in headlines for bad things, and that's Ian Gary. And yes, Ian Gary fights are something. His interviews are horrific, But that does not matter because I think it's clear he is very, very, very good despite what we all may want to say. Yes, his striking didn't look great against MVP. I think MVP goes into fights wanting to confuse his opponents more than actually beating them, because let's give the guy a break. MVP was just hopping around in there, and Ian did grapple, although it looked very strange. He found a way to win. I think due to the fact that he's training with Charles down in Brazil, and we know what his striking was from his prior training, probably only loses to Shovkat at welterweight. Number 38. This might be the most controversial, but it really shouldn't. If you think this is controversial, you're kind of crazy, but I have Bo Nickel here. The only thing you could argue is that he should be higher. I know he does not have any big wins, but let's just use our eyes for once and say, yeah, he's probably pretty damn good and he should be fighting in the top 10. Like, he needs to get that Sean O'Malley Peter Yan fight immediately. Like, I do not think we all need to see Bo Nickel beat up all these cans for years to come. Bo is at that level. Just give him his shot now. He's beating everyone with such ease, even easier than Sean was beating people, easier than Conor was beating people. Granted, that's because Bo is fighting absolute cans. Like, sometimes I wonder if I'm gonna get a call to go fight Bo Nickel. That's how bad his competition is. Coming in at number 37 is Yuri Prohaska, and Yuri is like, oh my god, he's the Michael Chandler of the heavier divisions. Like, he has this super fantastic and impressive fighting style where he blocks shots with his head. That is his main form of defense, and I don't know if he thinks there's more wrong to his fighting style, because he said he wants to go and make improvements. And look, I'm a couch coach. We're all couch coaches. You're watching a video in the UFC at home. We're all a bit couch coachy. But come on, man. It's pretty clear what Yuri's biggest issue is. His defense is just terrible. Even in the Rakic fight, even though he won, you kind of looked at it like, man, Rakic was piecing him up and just got chinned. But with that being said, at some point, you got to look at it and say a win is a win. He beat Glover. He beat Rakic. He beat Dominic Reyes. He is one of the top fighters at light heavyweight. Coming in at number 36, and this is one I felt really weird about, but it's Brian Ortega. And I often forget how good Brian Ortega is, mainly because of how goofy he is outside the ring. Goofy in the awkward sense, like this dude, from cutting weight issues to rolling his ankle right before the fight starts. We often forget that he almost beat Volkanovski in his prime, and he did piece up Yair after getting his ass kicked in the first round. Ortega is one of those fighters that when he wins, it's never clean, but he always seems to get the job done, and him versus Lopez is going to be a banger. That is such a good fight. I can't believe we didn't get it on 303, but Ortega is definitely someone that we can't disregard like we have so many times in the past. Number 35, I hate that I have to put him here, but it's Cyril. I wish Cyril fought more. Like many other fighters in the UFC, for whatever reason, their least favorite thing to do is fight. This dude is doing everything else from movies. I don't know who is booking Cyril Gane for a movie. He's ducking Tom Aspinall, but he is very, very good, and he's booked against Volkov now. He's probably going to win that fight easily, but I have Volkov actually above him on this list. I know, crazy. Spoiler alert too. At number 34, we have Rose, and Rose is at such a weird point in her career. She has completely gone under the radar. She is never in any major events. Even though she's a Fight Night main event, it doesn't have the same feel as when she was a co-main on those Trevor Whitman cards where they had all three of them on it. Her loss against Feroy made us all think she might have fallen off a bit or just gone down to strawweight, but she looks like she's recovered, maybe adjusted to the weight. Maybe she was just off in that fight to begin with. I would imagine in a year's time she's going to be way higher on this list, and her versus Valentina for the belt would be crazy, although I don't think Valentina is getting the belt again. And speaking of belts, we have the lowest champion on this list, and I have absolutely no problem whatsoever putting her down here. If anything, she should be even lower, and it's Raquel Pennington. Need I say more? That might have been worse than Carla vs. Rose, because Carla vs. Rose was funny because of how shit it was, but Pennington vs. Bueno Silva was just like, what? Like, oh my, I don't even want to talk about it. Pennington is number 33. Number 32 is Davison Figueiredo, and I kind of wish I was able to put Davison higher, but his win over Cheeto recently was very, very good. I think it's hard because you know at bantamweight he's going to run into someone that's too big. Like, he could get his way to the title shot if they do it properly, like have him avoid Song, Umar, and get him in there with Piotr. Him versus Piotr would be a banger. Him versus Henry's a banger. That fight wouldn't happen because they train together, but Davison having this whole second leg of his career at bantamweight is making him one of the all-time greats. Number 31 is Steve Urquhart, and I'm just going to keep it a $150 with you. I did not know he was in the UFC till he fought Pantoja. I know, but if all of you claim you knew Steve Urquhart before, some of you gotta be lying. Like, he's a dog, and I like him, and I'm a fan of him because of that Pantoja fight. I can see he's very, very, very good, but I'd be lying if I say I knew who he was before, and I know that is terrible. Look at me, I'm a shitty MMA YouTuber. Coming in at number 30, we have Heroic, and man, I was watching Erin Blanchfield versus her in the arena, And Jesus Christ, oh my goodness, 50-45 Erin Blanchfield. I thought Erin Blanchfield was going to be the next, like, women's GOAT, and she completely got dominated by Feroy. Shevchenko would be really good too, because Shevchenko is really old now. Coming in at 29, we have Jack Maddalena. He is really good, and him versus Shovcat or Ian Gary or Wonderboy is a banger. A banger of a fight. I'm really excited to see where his career goes, because his boxing and striking is so interesting to watch compared to a lot of the more boring strikers like number 28 and Sean Strickland. Man, I'm gonna be honest, like, I don't even want to put him on this list, but I know I have to put him on this list because that would be completely fucking stupid to not. But Sean Strickland's number 28, and I know he's done all this stuff, but I just don't think he's that good, but he apparently is. Although winning a fight with a jab is apparently the new thing to do, I guess he's better than nothing. But Jesus Christ, him versus Costa was fucking terrible, man. Number 27, we have the chillest guy in the UFC in Brandon Royval. Man, I wish he got the title shot against Pantoja again, because Royval is really exciting. He always has that finish potential, which I think is what makes him so good. But when you look at the landscape of flyweight, especially with Makhachev out, him versus Pantoja should happen again. And unless you think Amir is going to beat him, Royval is that dude at flyweight still. Because of his demeanor, we forget how good he actually is. And number 26, I feel so goofy for doing this, I'm sorry, but it's Volkov. The reason he's so high is he beat Sergey, who is an absolute world beater of world beaters. Maybe what that fight was to Sergey was what Derek Lewis was to Ngannou. But I think you have to be moved really high up for beating Sergey. We can't forget how good he was, even though Tom did catch him and knock him out. For Volkov to do that to Sergey means he's reaching a new prime at 35, and credit to him, man. I don't think any of us think he's that good, but the results speak for themselves, and sometimes you just gotta lay down your hands and be like, yeah, he kind of fucked up Sergey. Coming in at number 25, and this is so sad, but it's Volkanovski. Oh my god, I can't believe he's so low. I just can't believe he's on a 3-fight losing streak, but that's what it is. Like, he is on a 3-fight losing streak. I feel like putting him at 25 is almost like fan service at this point. Like, we're just being nice. But I think he'd manage to find a way to beat Diego and Emmett. I think he'd be the favorite in those fights. But, man, if him versus Ilya happens again, I don't see a different result. I think him chasing the lightweight belt is ultimately what led to his downfall. He is the featherweight GOAT. But I think we're going to see if Max gets the belt back, you're going to have all those conversations come back again. If Ilya gets this couple, they're going to be like, he beat Volk. Man. Coming at number 24, we have everyone's least favorite fighter in Magomed Ankalaev. Now, Magomed hasn't really done anything for us to hate him. Like, his fights are actually somewhat exciting, which is crazy, even though him versus Jan kinda sucked. He got the knockout over Johnny Walker. He has the wrestling. I don't think anyone needs to be sold on why Magomed is so good, but I like the fact that they're ducking him from a title shot. It's really messed up. But coming in at number 23, we have Tatiana Suarez, one of the most hyped women's fighters. She's eventually going to fight for the belt. I actually can't believe she hasn't already. I don't know what's taking that so long to book. But many people think she is going to beat Wei Li, which is pretty insane considering how good Wei Li is. Personally, I think Wei Li still beats her, but I seem to be in the minority there, and I'm sure many of you are on her hype train as well, just as you are on number 22, which is Kayla Harrison. This is what I mean by wins not meaning everything. Yes, she only has one win in the UFC, but let's be honest, Kayla ragdolls Pennington, ragdolls Buena Silva, and ragdolls Pena. Don't think I need to sell you on why Kayla Harrison is that good. If you do need to be sold, I think you need to rewatch her fights because she is that dominant. Coming in at number 21 is another sad one that feels so wrong to say, but it's Kamaru Usman. This is another one where it's like he's on a 3-fight losing streak, but I think he's better off than Volk. Like, I think Kamaru would be able to wrestle the likes of Ian Gary and Shovcat and even below. I think he'd probably still lose to Leon again because they've matched up so many times. I think he still has a little bit more in the tank, but he's taken so much time off that he might look very different his next time out from when we saw him before, and I mean different in the bad sense. Man, he was just fighting Colby Covington yesterday, and now we are wondering if he's ever gonna win again. At number 20, we have Leon. This is pretty crazy. I felt comfortable moving him this far down the list because of how terrible that performance was against Bilal. Jesus Christ. I think it was an off day, but I can't disregard that. He did not show up at all. He got outstruck by Bilal. He looked so uncomfortable against Bilal Muhammad in there that he got shoved all the way down to number 20. And I think some of you, with your parlays that busted, probably wish he was even lower on this list. Number 19, we have Shevchenko, and I actually don't even know how comfortable I feel with this because of how long it's been, but we know what she's done in the past. She looked pretty decent against Grasso, and by all means, probably beat her. I think the main reason I don't have her above Grasso is because of her age and the fact that she's likely going to look way worse the next time she's out than she was before. And I think when you go back and watch the Grasso-Shevchenko fight, it was more so Shevchenko not pulling the trigger than Grasso being that much better than her. That's just my opinion anyways. But coming in at number 18, we have Charles. Man, Charles, how did you not submit Arman? The whole world was behind you against Arman. But Charles Oliveira, I think it still beats Fiziev, Gamrot, Dustin, Justin, Chandler, Conor. I think he still has a lot more in the tank, and I know a lot of people are writing him off, but I want to see him go up to 170, give him a shove cat, give him an Usman. Him versus Usman at 70 would be so good. Let's see him make a run for the 170 title. I think he beats Bilal. I hope he beats Bilal. I mean, everyone hopes everyone beats Bilal. Coming in at number 17, we have Alexa Grasso. I think you have to put her over Shevchenko just because of the fact that she's younger, the fact that she's constantly improving. And finishing Shevchenko isn't something that you can just forget about, even if it was a little while ago. And like I said in the Shevchenko point, maybe I would have put her over if she was a little bit younger. Coming in at number 16, we have Robert Whittaker. Man, that fight against Ikram was crazy. I can't believe he's fighting Khamzat again, but he's probably not actually fighting Khamzat because Khamzat's going to pull out. But he looked incredible. I do believe the Dricus fight was one of the few times in MMA you can say a fight was a fluke. I just don't see how Dricus is going to beat Whittaker again, and I'm very hesitant to call fights flukes because it's like, what's the point? But him versus Dricus was a fluke, man, because Whittaker would absolutely smoke him now, I think. And I think there's a chance we see him versus Izzy again. Coming in at number 15, we have Merab. I think he's one of the best bantamweight has ever had. I think him versus Petr Yan was one of the most insane performances we will ever see at bantamweight and in the UFC in general. I actually can't believe that fight went the way it did. Merab's a killer. I do think Sean is going to beat him because Sean's footwork is that much better than everyone else Merab has fought. I don't think Merab has fought anyone with the level of footwork Sean has with the height. Yes, Jan was really good, but Jan was shorter, and Sean has been training his whole life with grappling defense. But nonetheless, I think Merab would have beat Aljo back then, and I think Merab is one of those killers that maybe history will actually forget about. Coming in at number 14, we have Dricus. I do not like the fact that I put him over Whittaker. You can come at me for that in the comments because he's not better than Whittaker, but he is. Because he did beat Sean Strickland, he did retain his belt, and he is on a crazy winning streak. It's hard to look at his streak between Brunson, Darren Till, Whittaker, and Sean Strickland, and maybe, just maybe, he is actually this good. At number 13, we have Shavkat Rakhmonov. Shavkat is still waiting for that big major fight. Him versus Chef Neil was tough, and him versus Wonderboy was not as tough, but okay. But he needs one more big killer in Usman and Ian Gary, a Jack Madalena, Colby Covington, something to get him that regard. I think he is that good. He doesn't have the craziest head movement. Everyone points to that. But nonetheless, I think Shavkat is going to be one of those guys that is going to get the belt at some point, just like number 12 in Umar. And Umar, yeah, Umar is really good. His striking is way better than we all thought he was. He seems like a pretty chill guy too. He seems pretty likable. And although I gave Corey credit for it, you also have to give credit for Umar because he did 50-45 him. Although it was one of the closer 50-45s we've seen, and I know you guys know what I mean. He's probably going to get the belt at some point. Him versus Sean is a super exciting fight. I think Corey also laid the blueprint of how to counter wrestle the Dagestani style, not offensively but at least defensively, and I think that will benefit the likes of Sean and everyone that Umar fights in the future. But Umar is clearly the next guy at 135, and number 11 is Arman. Beating Charles and Beneil the way he did, I think it's pretty clear that Arman is super good. I don't know if he beats Islam because him versus Charles was really close, and Charles did catch him in a submission. I think would have ended the fight in most regard, but it didn't, and Arman managed to pull out the decision victory. Arman's a lot wilder as a striker. He's a lot more confident in his striking than most wrestlers are, and that might be his fatal flaw against Islam. But him versus Islam is probably the closest and most insane matchup you have in the UFC right now from a hardcore stylistic perspective. I don't think many would dispute that. Even though his personality is a little bit rough, it's hard to deny that Arman is likely one of the best fighters the UFC has right now. Coming in at number 10, we have Sean O'Malley. Now, part of me wants to put Sean higher on this list, but I think it's just when you see the other names, it's like, damn. But Sean, 50-45 Cheeto, knocked out Aljo in 2. Really close fight against Petr. It's pretty clear that Sean is way better than everyone thought he was. I was kind of always on his hype train because I think when you can see his fights, you can see just how easy he was beating the cans. Like, it's a little bit different, you know what I mean? Not everyone beats cans the same way. And Sean has this attitude about him that he's not going to get obsessed with the fame, although that's what it may seem. And yes, we all clown Sean for a lot of his antics, but I think you gotta look at his fights and say, yeah, he's pretty damn good. Coming in at number 9, we do have an all-time great in Israel Adesanya. I have no problem putting him above Dricus because he only lost to Sean Strickland. He came back and knocked out Poirer, and he was doing really good in the first Poirer fight as well. And everything he's done in the past. Yes, we clown on Izzy for his dog antics and a lot of his antics and how he talks, but he's a really good fighter. I think the Dricus fight is going to show us how much left in the tank he has, because it does seem like the conclusion of his career should be him versus Hamzat or him versus Poirer again. And I feel like with the way things are going, it's going to be him versus Hamzat or him versus Whitaker. But I think we know from a story perspective, we want him versus Alex again. Number 8, we have Ilya. And I kind of wish Ilya was a little higher in this list until I saw the other names. But Ilya beating Volk off that run was just crazy. Ilya against Josh Emmett was one of the craziest ass beatings you'll ever see. Ilya versus Bryce Mitchell was honestly insane to watch. Bryce Mitchell had the flu though, otherwise he would have won. Although it was sad to watch Ilya beat Volk, I think we know Ilya is that dude, and he's probably going to be able to beat number 7, which is Max Holloway, who has really come into his own. And when you look at his resume, it's actually insane. If he beats Ilya, he's probably going to be looked at as a featherweight GOAT, because I think a lot of you have forgotten just how insane his resume was. Even when he was fighting in main events that were not title defenses, everyone seems to forget that non-title fights still matter to your resume, and he has an insane one. And him versus Gaethje will be an all-time fight for years to come, and maybe even decades to come. Maybe that finish will never be topped, but someone who may top it is number 6, which is Tom Aspinall. And I'm gonna say it right now, Tom Aspinall beats Jon Jones. That Jon Jones that's fighting currently at heavyweight does not beat that Tom Aspinall, because that Tom Aspinall smoked Curtis, smoked Sergey, he smoked everybody. Tom Aspinall is that dude, and I don't think anyone has anything for Tom at heavyweight right now anyway. Almeida would be interesting, Cyril would be interesting, but I think Tom beats Jon Jones easier than he beats those two. Coming in at number 5, we have the best women's fighter in the world, in my opinion at the moment, because Amanda Nunes retired, in Zhang Weili. Feel like Weili is slept on. Is that crazy? Is that insane to say? Weili is definitely slept on at this point in her career. I feel like she doesn't get the hype she deserves. She beat up Yan Xiaoning. Even though Yan had that moment, her versus Tatiana Suarez will be a huge legacy fight for her. Coming in at number 4, this is one I was not uber comfortable with, but I do have Pantoja at number 4, and I know. But when you look at it, like, he did beat Moreno very easily. He beat Royval very easily, and even before his title fight, he was getting finishes before. Pantoja is one of those guys, almost in a Max Holloway sense, where he has a pretty crazy resume, but I feel like he's just never gonna get credit for it. And I think he's gonna beat everyone else in his division when you just look at his skills. Like, he just has the heart, the grappling, and the striking. He has the full package, just like number 3. And I'm sorry, Dana White, but Jon Jones is number 3 for me too, because Jon Jones does not fight that much. Him versus Cyril, yes, he did beat up Cyril really bad because Cyril has no grappling, but he needs to be more active. And it's hard to say with him aging that he's better than the other two. But I think due to his activity, you kind of do have to move him down. And if we're talking about right now, the other two are definitely above him. So before I name the order of the other two, make sure you leave a like. Let me know how terrible my list was, and leave a comment of your list down below. And coming in at number 2, we have Islam Makhachev. Need I say more? He beat Dustin. He's beating everybody. And I think it's more so of why do I have Alex Periera at number 1? That's because Alex is more active. Alex is getting crazy finishes. Islam is getting hurt a lot more in his fights versus Alex, who is finishing everyone with absolute ease. So if you enjoyed this video, watch me break down the 10 best main events of the last 5 years. So make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and don't forget, we're just getting started. We're going to stay consistent, and I'll see you in the next video.